Okay, we've got a busy schedule this morning for everyone, so let's, the Subcommittee on National Security, Illicit Finance, International Financial Institutions will come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the committee at any time. This hearing is entitled The Role of Export-Import XM Bank of the United States Amid Intensifying Economic Competition with China. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit extraneous materials to the chair for inclusion in the record. And I recognize myself for 5 minutes to give an opening statement. From the outset of the 118th Congress, my top priority as chairman of the subcommittee has been addressing what I believe to be the biggest threat, not only to the United States security, but also global security. That threat is the bid for global economic domination posed by communist China. Unlike the United States, the CCP does not subscribe to the rules-based order that has governed trade and export credit financing for nearly a century. The CCP demonstrates daily that it plays by its own rules and will do anything to gain footholds in strategic sectors vital to security. China's highly aggressive actions in exports of credit financing blend beyond economic advancement and are clear in effort to enhance its global power and economic might. It is critical the United States compete and win in this arena against China. One important tool for doing so is the topic of today's hearing, the Export-Import Bank of the United States, or XM. It's been 5 years since this committee last held a hearing on XM, leading up to its most recent reauthorization in 2019. And it's been 9 years since the sitting chair of the bank testified before us in 2015. So we're glad to welcome the current chair, the president of XM, Ms. Reta Lewis, to testify before us today. Thank you. Appreciate your attendance and look forward to your testimony here. XM was established during the Great Depression and over the decades since. It has helped to support exports of the U.S. goods and services in cases where the private sector is unwilling or unable to provide financing. Through direct loans, loan guarantees, insurance, and our innovative reinsurance risk-sharing program, the bank boosts American small businesses and exporters, creating or sustaining tens of thousands of American jobs across the country. XM's ability to manage risks successfully is why it is one of the rare government-run entities that actually makes a profit for American taxpayers and has sent approximately $9 billion back to U.S. Treasury for debt reduction since 1992. To orient the bank to directly combat the economic threat of communist China, as part of its 2019 reauthorization, Congress directed XM to establish the China and Transformational Exports Program, or CTEP. However, 5 years in, although it seems this program is having some impact, there is much more to do that I think it could do. I've always viewed XM as having a vital role in the United States' ability to promote global economic leadership. We saw the harm when XM's charter lapsed between 2015 and 2019, leading to a significant increase of projects being funded by foreign export credit agencies, and those jobs went to foreign companies and workers. There's enormous opportunity in restoring and bolstering America's position as a global energy superpower. XM's charter rightfully requires that it consider deals based on banking criteria and not political considerations, such as whether an industry is disfavored, as hydrocarbons are by the current administration. To your credit, Chair Lewis, on your watch, XM approved hydrocarbon projects in Indonesia and Bahrain. Unfortunately, the green ideologues criticize you for doing so. Despite those correct decisions, there must be enormous political pressure to ignore your charter by applying a green filter to transactions. That is why it is so worrying to this committee that major projects, particularly the enormous natural gas projects in Mozambique, have been delayed and remain unfunded by XM, leaving tens of thousands of American jobs waiting. Similarly, nuclear power is an area where America needs to restore its role as a global leader, and XM could help do that. In these areas and other areas, I believe XM can help ensure a level playing field in our global geo-economic competition with China. But for the bank to play that role, it must be managed competently. That is why my colleagues and I were concerned by a recent Inspector General report that cited significant challenges at XM surrounding organizational culture, employee morale, and high attrition rates. In the OPM's Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey, XM plummeted from 12th place in 2021 to dead last among 30 small federal agencies for best places to work in the federal government. So, Chair Lewis, I hope to hear from you today just exactly what you and the rest of XM leadership are going to do to address these alarming trends. I appreciate your willingness to come before this committee and tell us about some of the XM successes, but also tell us how you and us can work better together to be able to make XM a better place to work, and a better functional agency. We look forward to your testimony. And with that, the chair recognizes the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Beatty, for 4 minutes for an opening statement.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and thank you to our witness, President and Chair of XM, Reta Jo Lewis, for appearing here today to discuss the role of the United States Export-Import Bank, particularly with respect to competition with China. This year, XM celebrates, as we've just heard from our chair, 90 years of carrying out its mission to create economic opportunity for the United States companies and workers. So we're excited to hear from you, and I join my chairman in saying we're excited to hear how we can work together. So thank you for that, Mr. Chair. In full disclosure, I've had the opportunity to not only know, but work with Madam Chair and President for some time. For those who don't know, she comes to us as a scholar, Emory American University, a lawyer, a diplomat with years of international experience in this area. We know by providing financial tools to help the United States businesses export their American-made goods and services around the world, XM supports United States jobs and helps our companies successfully compete abroad. Today, you may hear claims that XM simply hands out money to large corporations, but I want to go on the record, Mr. Chair, stating that, in fact, 90% of XM's authorizations directly benefit United States small businesses. The purpose of XM is to level the playing field to ensure that American companies can compete for global sales, and that is exactly what the bank does in every single one of our congressional districts represented in this hearing today. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the records a chart. I think that will be very helpful. It identifies the amount of small businesses who benefit from the funds of those of us who are questioning you today. And let me just say, my colleagues on the other side, their small businesses should be applauding you because they are in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to small businesses, and we hear that frequently, that we are small business owners.
Without objection.
Thank you. Under your leadership, Chair Lewis, the Export-Import Bank has committed to advancing diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and cultivating a diverse workforce at the bank, and identifying ways to support women-owned, minority-owned, rural, et cetera, et cetera. The Export-Import Bank is critical to ensure the United States can effectively compete with China. The China and Transformational Exports Program supports U.S. exporters facing competition from China and ensures that we continue to lead in the 10 transformational export areas, including AI, renewable energy, fintech, and semiconductors. By fostering American innovation and expansion into global markets, XM enables the United States company to go toe-to-toe with foreign rivals, resulting in more export and more well-paying jobs in cities across the countries. Unfortunately, some of my colleagues across the aisle have fought the reauthorization of XM despite historically strong bipartisan support for the bank. Eliminating XM as proposed by some extremist agendas like Project 25 will only harm our nation's small business and hamper our efforts to compete against China. Democrats have a long record of working with you, and I'd like to say that I was proud to be here in 2015 because the Republicans used a discharge petition to do away with export, and Democrats have increased the cap for export-import lending. I yield back because my time is up.
Jill Yelly has time expired, and I want to thank her for the comments with regards and putting into the record the amount of small businesses that are helped by XM. I always call XM the small business bank because technically, even if you help a big business, it takes lots and lots of little businesses to be able to provide the parts and the service to that big business to be able to make this all work. So there's a ripple effect that affects lots and lots of small businesses, and we have the chairman of the Small Business Committee with us today, and I'm the vice chairman of that committee and proud to do so as well. So it's a really, really big deal to have you with us today, Ms. Lewis. And so with that, we welcome the testimony of the Honorable Reta Jo Lewis, Ms. Lewis is the president and chair of the board of directors of XM Bank. The ranking member did a great job of giving us an overview of your past and present accomplishments and your academic record. And so with that, we thank you for taking time to be here. You'll be recognized for 5 minutes to give an oral presentation of your testimony. Without objection, your written statements will be made part of the record. Just a little quick overview, a tutorial here on the light system. When it hits red, that's the stop sign. So, and we will, when you hear me like that, so if we can kind of wind up your answer to whatever, we'll move on. We will, as we indicated earlier, try and adjourn at 10:30 here as a result of votes being called. So with that, Ms. Lewis, you're recognized for 5 minutes. Please turn on your microphone. Ms. Lewis, there we go. And pull the microphone close to you, please. And that box does move, so just pull it close to you so we can.
Chairman Lutenmeyer, Ranking Member Beatty, members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify on the Export-Import Bank of the United States, XM's role in intensifying economic competition with the People's Republic of China, known as the PRC. We hear from our partners and clients on a day-to-day basis about the economic challenges posed by the PRC's actions. This committee's concern about competition from the PRC was instrumental, as you know, in establishing the China and Transformational Export Programs, our mandate, which is now a part of XM's historic 2019 reauthorization. Through CTEP, XM supports U.S. manufacturers and exporters facing PRC competition and advances Americans' comparative leadership across 10 transformational export areas. As you know, XM is the official export credit agency of the United States. Its congressionally mandated mission is to support U.S. jobs by financing or facilitating exports. The agency does this through our direct loans, loan guarantees, and insurance programs in cases where the private sector is unable or unwilling to do so. A lapse in our charter, a lack of quorum on the board of directors had a devastating impact on operations, staffing, and morale. But during the 4-year period when XM was precluded from authorizing transactions greater than $10 million, competitors like the PRC and other Asian, Canadian, and European countries stepped in to fill the void. Our team has worked tirelessly to revitalize, restore, and rebuild XM's reputation as a reliable partner. In FY 2023, because of the dedication of our talented workforce, XM supported nearly $8.8 billion in authorizations, a 67% increase over FY 2022, and supported an estimated 40,000 jobs across the country. Of the nearly $8.8 billion in total authorizations last year, $2.4 billion, or more than a quarter, supported our CTEP mandate. The value of CTEP transactions is significant. Since my arrival in February 2022, CTEP authorizations have jumped from $253 million in FY 2022 to $2.4 billion in FY 2023. And at this point in FY 2024, the dollar amount in authorized CTEP transactions is greater than at this point last year. In total, XM has approved $3.6 billion in CTEP transactions. So you may ask, what does countering competition with the PRC look like in practice, and how has XM used the CTEP mandate to counter it? Here's just one example. This past November, XM's board approved the $169 million direct loan to Beta Technologies, a small business in Vermont that manufactures electric power aircraft. The direct loan will finance the expansion of Beta's manufacturing campus and help U.S. manufacturers compete with the PRC for this emerging industry. The transaction also falls on the XM's Make More in America initiative, or MMIA. American industries produce goods, services, and technologies that compete and win in global markets on quality, innovation, and life cycle price. But when the playing field is not level, U.S. exporters are disadvantaged when competing in foreign markets. The PRC's industrial policies hamper and harm the ability of America's exporters to compete on fair terms in the global marketplace. We are laser focused on the challenge posed by the PRC and the need to ensure a level playing field for U.S. exporters. We are using our tools like CTEP and MMIA to address this challenge. It's fair to say we want to do more and we can do more. Our CTEP transactions are still subject, though, to XM's 2% default rate cap. Suffice it to say, the default rate poses a significant challenge to XM's ability to support U.S. exporters. China's XM and the PRC and other lenders, export lenders, are not bound by these constraints. We are seeking a default rate cap exemption for CTAP transactions. This will allow XM to compete more aggressively against the PRC and embrace higher risk technologies and markets. I would also be remiss if I did not mention that XM's charter expires at the end of 2026, because from 2015 to 2019, when the charter lapsed and we lacked the board quorum, the world saw a 35% increase. So, Mr. Chairman and the committee, one of the things that we would be remiss in not talking about is the fact that an early reauthorization with enhancements to CTAP mandate, backed by a large bipartisan majority, would send a strong signal to the world that Congress is committed to supporting XM and empowering the agency to advance national interests by facilitating exports and supporting jobs. I look forward to working with you and other congressional stakeholders, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. We'll now turn to member questions, and the chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Chair Lewis, let's drill down on XM's deal flow and national security. XM has a statutory lending authority of $135 billion. How much of that $135 billion is now obligated, and how much more could XM be doing before reaching the $135 billion ceiling?
That allocation, Mr. Chairman, is around $34 billion that we have authorized thus far. And we have a very, very strong pipeline of projects throughout the different mandates, as well as throughout different sectors that we're operating in, and we look forward to continuing to do more.
Okay, I know that when we shut down in the late 20-teens, that really hurt our ability, and I guess the reputation of the XM Bank, and it took so a while to get it back up and going. Then the pandemic hit. But I think we're in a position now where we need to, especially with China coming on, to be able to compete against them and find a way to get that done. And so that leads into my next question here with regards to Congress passed and as you mentioned here, President Trump signed into law the reauthorization. As part of the legislation, the program on China and transformational exports was established with a goal of 20% of your statutory lending authority, which is $27 billion, to counter China. You note in your testimony that it was only, I think, 2.4 last year. You're up to over $3 billion now, if I'm not mistaken. What's your strategy for substantially growing CTAP transactions?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. We are we have a sense of urgency about the work that we're doing, and our strategy has been, as we review the 10 transformational exports, we have seen significant growth in the work that we've been doing in everything from renewables energy, 5G, as well as in the work on water and sanitation. Our strategy has been that we are looking to use all of our tools to compete with China, as well as to help build and keep manufacturing here in the United States. That's why, as we have looked at the 10 specific sectors, everything from AI to financial technology to renewable energy, we are continuing to be as aggressive as we can to work as a whole of government in looking for bankable projects.
Okay, as you go through all this here, the CTAP is currently limited to 10 transformational export areas. We look at changes to the program. How does that impact your underwriting? Should we be looking at adding more areas or scrap them all together? I think that's one of the questions we want to look at here. Basically, what kind of changes do you see to the program that can be impactful? The 10 transformational export areas here, do we need to scrap it? Do we need to expand it? You mentioned already that the 2% default cap rate is a problem. Should it go to 4? You suggested here that we have an exemption for just CTAP programs. Can you expand on that, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Also, no other ECA that we are aware of, and definitely not the PRC, has those types of constraints on them as it relates to a default rate. One of the things that, as I mentioned in my testimony, we are definitely seeking a CTAP carve-out, as well as appreciating the opportunities to come before this body about early reauthorization. We believe that that carve-out will continue to help us level the playing field because we still have numerous statutory parameters that other ECAs do not.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think one of the things we need to look at is this green lens that you have to look through every project from has got to be forgotten about. We got to look at the value of that project with regards to our ability to impact jobs here at home and across the world, and a leadership position that we can be in. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention or discuss for a few minutes here the report from OPM. It's very alarming, quite frankly, Ms. Lewis, whenever best places to work, you go from 12th to the bottom. And this committee has oversight of FDIC, and the FDIC just had a scathing report in which it had documented cases of racial discrimination, sexual discrimination, and even a rape, what it was, and with regards to some of its employees and some of the training facilities that they were located in. That is disturbing when you're that low. Can you tell me what's going on, what your plans are to fix the problem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. One of the things that I say on a repeated basis is that human capital is our greatest resource. And one of the areas that I was very intense on after being confirmed and prior to confirmation was to really review where we were as it relates to staff morale, where we were in terms of an agency. As I have begun to study the XM and being there now, XM, if I look at the FEB scores that were started back in 2005, we have always been at the lower 1/5 of the category. And so that data was telling me that there was some systemic historical challenges, and there are opportunities for us to do more. One of the things that immediately I began to do was to hire human capital.
Ms. Lewis, I'll let somebody else ask the question again, and you can do some further elaboration. My time is up. With that, we'll go to the gentlelady from Ohio, the ranking member. Ms. Beatty is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, President and Chair. Just for the record, I want to make sure in my opening statement when I said I was proud to be here that that got associated with when we reestablished the XM under Ranking Waters' leadership after 7 years. It may have gotten mixed in with something else. But for my first question, let me continue with what the chair is saying, because he is correct how we felt about FDIC and what was happening there. So I'll give you some time to finish your statement on that.
Madam Congresswoman, one of the first things we also did was to bring in an outside, one of the big four, to work directly with our leadership team to improve the unity and leadership levels with focus on training and development. We hired in more than 5 years, we had not hired a permanent chief human capital officer, and we have done so. We also have hired a new chief management officer. We have redoubled our efforts around training and development, launched our first formal mentoring program, enhanced our affinity programs, expanded individual benefit programs. We are working extensively on next generation of leaders and ensuring that our next senior level officers are prepared for the future. We have conducted over 3 offsites retreat, not just with the senior managers, but with all of our managers, which encompasses about 60 of them. We have required individual departments to host off-site retreats for their teams. And so we know that change may be slow to occur, but I do believe that we are moving in the right direction.
That's what I was going to ask you if you think. And let me just remind people, you've been there for how long?
About 2 years.
For 2 years, and you said in more than 5. So some of this, I think I'm safe in saying you acquired from past, and it sounds like you at least have a plan, and they're bringing experts from the outside to deal with you. So I am sure you will be asked in later time about that again. So I applaud you for recognizing and not denying that there is an issue, and I think that's the first step. Let me also go to the next question. There's been some discussion about increasing XM's default cap from 2% to 4%. Many of my colleagues have put together legislation that would do that. Can you expound on or explain how this change could positively, if so, impact your work and your capacity to carry out your mission?
Absolutely, Congresswoman. We are seeking a default rate cap exemption for CTAP transactions. We believe it will allow XM to compete more aggressively against the PRC and embrace higher risk technologies and markets. When you look at what hampers any other agency, no other U.S. government agency has that cap, no other foreign credit agency, and definitely not the PRC that we are aware of. We know that with XM sunsetting in 2026, early reauthorization would signal that market and U.S. exporters that XM is for them, in it for them for the long term. So getting that default rate cap and that carve out for CTAP would be exceptional and significant.
Thank you. One last question I may be able to squeeze in. Chair Lewis, XM's authorization is going to expire, and you've said that in your opening remarks, December 30th, 2026. And reauthorization will be necessary prior to that date, if you've said. And let me again say to all who are here and some who may not have been here as long as the chair and I, this has always been a bipartisan for most of the time that I have been here. So can you take my last minute to share or say, are there any potential long-term challenges facing XM that Congress should consider in reauthorizing your agency?
Yeah, Congresswoman, thank you. Also to the committee, we have always operated in a bipartisan way. Chairman Bacchus, who used to be the head of this committee, sends his regards. He's going to be with us later today. He could not be here right now, but he's on his way to Washington. The continuation of the seeking of the relief for the CTAP carve-out, the early reauthorization, is the areas that would be of significance to support jobs, help our companies level the playing field, and help us compete with China.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I give you back 7 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Gentlelady from Ohio. We're going to try to get one more in here before the votes are called. So with that, we're going to recognize the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Barr, who's the chair of the Subcommittee on Financial Institutions Monetary Policy. He's recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chair Lewis, my wife graduated from the University of Georgia, so she would say, go dogs.
Yes.
I'm a Kentucky Wildcat, so that's hard for me to do. But anyway, great to see you, and thanks for your service. In May, members of this subcommittee sent you a letter expressing concerns with recent suggestions that XM was prioritizing projects aligned with environmental goals as opposed to this China objective. Chairman Luetkemeyer mentioned deal flow and the backlog of unapproved projects. One such project is the natural gas pipeline in Mozambique. What is the holdup here?
You know, Mr. Chairman, definitely tell your wife, go dogs. She is absolutely right. We're all about the red and the black. Right now, Congresswoman, there is no decision has been made yet with respect to that amendment of the approved financing for that particular project. The current amendment does not involve a fresh review of entire transactions, which was approved under the prior administration.
Well, let me just, without regard to the specifics of the Mozambique natural gas pipeline, I hope that the holdup is not related to the political influences of the administration's climate agenda. In fact, when we reauthorized XM, we prohibited the bank from discriminating against fossil energy projects. And let me tell you why that's important with respect to the China Transformational Exports program that we also authorized in the reauthorization. As the independent task force report from the Council on Foreign Relations demonstrates, since the creation of the Belt and Road Initiative, billions of dollars in Chinese funds have flowed toward fossil fuel projects around the world. Now, it's great if the United States can offer clean energy projects as an alternative in lesser developed parts of the world as a tool to counter Belt and Road. But the fact of the matter is, in the global South, there's a lot of energy poverty. And when we don't offer an alternative for those lesser developed countries in terms of energy security, they're going to go to China. And so I am concerned that the bias against fossil energy projects at XM and within the administration compromises U.S. national security with respect to this objective of countering China. Can you speak to that, and can you commit to this committee that the administration's climate agenda will not compromise our efforts to combat Belt and Road?
You know, Congressman, we know as XM, we're not an island separated from the politics of the broader government. However, we believe that there is an important role for XM to play to support all industries and workers in our country, but we have to do it also in accordance with the statutory, regulatory, and policy requirements that Congress has laid out for us. Congress has been very clear about the non-discrimination clause in our charter, and we take that to heart. But to further your comment on Moz, the amendment request, just so you know, is being processed in compliance with XM's standard policies. XM remains in coordination with the other project lenders, and due to force majeure, no disbursements have been made to date on this transaction.
Well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to hearing more about the progress on Mozambique. I introduced a bill called the Countering China Through American Exports Competitiveness Act. I'm a big supporter of CTEP, and I appreciate your work on that. I want to supercharge that work, and this bill would increase from 20 to 33% the incentives that XM would be used to counter China. Do you agree that while it's still essential that the bank make sound business decisions in its deals, allowing the bank to make larger, more aggressive deals is a key tool in countering China?
Congressman, as they say, if we have more, we can do more. And we really look forward to working with you and the committee on any legislation that is going to assist us to help American workers, help American business exporters to compete against China, to help level.
And by the way, I agree with you about raising the default rate cap, especially for CTEP. My bill would raise that from 2% to 5% to allow XM to be more aggressive in its transactions and posture to counter China's Belt and Road Initiative. I think the goal under CTEP right now would be something like $27 billion. I think the deals are only about 2.
We're at 3.6.
3.6, so you've got a lot of room to go to get to 20%. I want to raise it to 33% of all XM activities. So just encourage you to get a little higher on those deals that are related to CTEP.
Yes, we are, sir, and those deals are coming in. Our pipeline is strong.
Thank you. Yield back. Appreciate your service. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir.
Gentleman yields back. With that, we go to Mr. Nichols from North Carolina, and he's recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chair Lewis, for being here today. Enjoyed talking with you earlier. The Export-Import Bank plays an essential role in assuring American competitiveness around the globe by providing American companies with the financial tools necessary to export their goods and services globally. We can compete directly with China's aggressive trade practices while boosting American manufacturing jobs. One area where the Export-Import Bank has the potential to be extremely influential is nuclear energy exports. The export of U.S. civil nuclear energy technology is important to our national security, our economic security, and most importantly, to fighting the climate crisis around the globe. Governments around the world are shifting policies towards nuclear energy, and the U.S. must be the leader in this space. Unfortunately, Russia is the world's dominant global nuclear supplier. Russia's state-owned nuclear energy conglomerate currently has 70% of the worldwide export market for new reactor construction. The Chinese nuclear industry has said that China could build as many as 30 nuclear reactors around the world abroad, worth $145 billion by 2030. Russia and China both funnel endless resources into nuclear exports for their geopolitical influence. Meanwhile, U.S. companies are competing against foreign governments without meaningful support from the federal government. The United States of America cannot fall behind. That's why I'm drafting legislation to jumpstart nuclear financing at the Export-Import Bank, and have a two-part question for you. What do you think of my proposal, and would you support these policies? So that's what I'm going to get to in a sec here. What role do you think the Export-Import Bank could play in financing nuclear energy if the default rate limit was permanently raised from 2% to 4%, and if civil nuclear facilities were included in the China and Transformational Exports Program? And again, would you support those policy proposals?
Congressman, thank you very much for that question. XM has been supporting financing for overseas nuclear transactions now for over 5 decades, and it has world-class expertise to be able to evaluate the technical, the legal, and the financial of these particular projects. One of the things that we're very supportive of, Congressman, is also a carve-out for under CTAP as well as a carve-out for nuclear. We believe that it will also continue to make us more competitive and be able to offer more flexibilities for our exporters, but also the continuation of supporting jobs, but more importantly, to help us compete against the PRC and Russia.
Should we be concerned about what happens when China and Russia start aggressively pushing their nuclear technology in key strategic areas around the world?
We should be concerned, but I'm going to let our State Department take that question when they come before you. But one of the areas specifically as it relates to XM, we want our manufacturers to be able to compete, but not just compete to win. We want those products to be American made. We do not want our manufacturers to lose, and that is why we are so aggressively in this space. And if you've seen the work that we've been doing over these last couple of years, very much being aggressive around not only the large nuclear reactors, but the work that our companies are producing, manufacturing around small nuclear reactors.
I want to do a lot more to help improve the mission. The Export-Import Bank has the experience and expertise to approve highly complex transactions like civil nuclear exports. Given the demand in this space, does the agency have the resources and staffing to do the business development, underwriting, and legal work needed to manage these transactions?
And that's why a carve-out, Congressman, could be so important for us under CTAP as well as in the nuclear space. We are also working very closely with our partner and our allies on co-financing together. We're working very closely in our entire United States government. We believe that it is the combination of all the work that we'll be able to do, we'll be able to see our exporters not only compete, but also to win and be able to help with the tools we have to level the playing field to be able to win against China and Russia.
It's clear that we're falling behind. China is a decade or more ahead of the U.S. in its ability to deploy nuclear reactors at scale. Given that China has 3 export credit agencies supporting its geopolitical ambitions, do you agree that the U.S. must work to level the playing field?
Absolutely, Congressman. These deals that you're speaking of are very large, and we need the types of flexibility that only this committee can be able to afford us. And we really look forward to working with you on your legislation.
Thanks so much, and I look forward to working closely in a bipartisan way with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to get this done. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The votes have been called, and in my discussions yesterday with the floor leader, he indicated he is intent on getting to 20 minutes for the first vote, and after that, he will start closing the board. So because of that, we're going to call a recess here. Ms. Lewis has agreed to stick around. For her purposes, we got 21 votes, which should take about an hour and a half roughly. So if you come back in the neighborhood of noon, we'll be back here as soon as votes are over. With that, the committee is recessed. The committee will be back in session, and appreciate the witness, Ms. Lewis, sticking around. Apologize for the interruption, but welcome to our world. This is the way we operate every day. But with that, let's go to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Williams, who is the Small Business Committee Chairman, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Madam Chair, thank you for being here today. Compared to other export credit agencies and international financial institutions, the U.S. EXIM Bank tends to move slower when approving deals. The EXIM approval process can take over 6 months, and in some cases, over a year. However, other countries like China are approving deals more quickly, which allows them to undercut Western export credit agencies. I understand the importance of taking the time to vet deals. I'm in the financing business myself, but I am concerned that the U.S. will be overlooked if our approval process is known to be slower, which puts us at a competitive disadvantage in China. So, Madam Chair, what is EXIM doing to improve deal approval timelines and ensure the bank remains competitive with its counterparts?
Yes, Congressman. One of the things that we have been able to definitely do is one of the things we realize is that our internal controls, which are very critical for any financial institution, we have been working to understand where we are in our processes and to move them quicker. We've also hired a Big Four to really help us revamp our internal controls procedures so that we can stand up as And we're also standing up an independent new ethics division. We know that our deals may take a little longer, but we want to make sure that we are continuing to do the work that Congress asked us to do in protecting the taxpayers, and that's why our due diligence may take a little longer, but we're doing what we can to move things faster.
Well, that's important, and thank you for doing that. Furthermore, it seems that the approval process has become even slower for fossil fuel-related projects as XM has come under pressure from environmental groups. Now, we cannot allow foreign adversaries like China to gain a competitive advantage over the United States because the administration is restricting projects based on politics. So, Madam Chair, do deals in certain sectors take longer than average, and if so, which sectors and why?
These, as you said, Congressman, I want to speak specifically to that. You know, we believe that at XM, we have a very serious role to play, especially in that industry. And to support, as you know, we support all industries and workers in our in accordance with the statutory, regulatory, and policy requirements. But one of the things is that we review each deal on its merits. We stay in close contact with all parties involved, and we're working through a lot of these deals are major project finance deals, and they have oftentimes some very serious security concerns. And with that, a lot of our underwriters do not have the clearances, but we are being very clear about those that do to make them understand that we are taking the responsibilities to look at all of these deals closer and make sure that we don't have any perceived delays.
Well, and they don't need to be based on certain related projects that may not fit this administration. So let me just ask this. Could you provide, I'm going to ask a question here, could you provide the committee with a list of deals that have taken more than a year to consider?
We can work with your staff and the committee on that, yes.
Okay, if you would do that, that'd be great. Now, China's Belt and Road Initiative has expanded its influence globally through massive infrastructure investments, raising concerns about the strategic and security implications for the United States. The Belt and Road Initiative has been criticized for creating debt dependencies for participating countries and increasing China's geopolitical leverage. As the U.S. seeks to counter China's influence, we face the challenge of competing effectively without adapting similar authoritarian or state-driven practices. So, Madam Chair, how does the Export-Import Bank plan to mitigate these risks and offer competitive alternatives to countries considering China's Belt and Road program?
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for the question, because we believe that we are working very aggressively to institute our China and Transformational Export Program. We've also, from the board, modernized our content policy as it relates to 5G and other transformational exports. And also, we believe that using tools like Make More in America to help build and keep manufacturing here in the United States is one of the big areas that's going to be transformative to help us compete with the PRC.
I've got a real short amount of time here. I'll ask you real quick. Has the number of vacancies in key positions hindered the XM Bank's ability to support U.S. exporters?
We've been working very aggressively with a new Chief Human Capital Officer and a Chief Management Officer to fill all of our vacancies, and we've been moving very aggressively on those.
Got to have people. I yield my time back.
Gentleman yields. With that, we go to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Muser, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much, Chair Lewis. It's, of course, crucial to understand the importance of the Export-Import Bank's role in supporting American businesses abroad with China and Russia, has been stated many times here. Financing global projects in an aggressive manner, XM is an important tool to help American companies. That's clear. Your approval of significant fossil fuel projects in Indonesia and Bahrain demonstrates XM's capacity. However, we need a commitment to remain project neutral, especially concerning the $18 billion in LNG projects in Mozambique and New Guinea. Allegations of delays due to the president's executive order need to be addressed. Secondly, reauthorization of XM's approaches next Congress. Exact time as we approach next Congress, fiscal responsibility is critical, and so we must examine how much of the $135 billion in capital that is currently obligated, consider measures to enhance fiscal prudence. And lastly, the XM is a lender of last resort, not a competitor to private financing. This distinction is vital to ensure it supports American companies effectively without encroaching on the private sector business. So, given President Biden's recent ban, Chairwoman, on LNG exports, can you commit to being project neutral for 2 LNG projects in Mozambique and New Guinea, totaling nearly $18 billion?
As it relates, Congressman, no decision, as we have said, has been made yet with respect to the amendment on the approved financing for this project. We know, as it relates to Maz, LNG's project, for all of our deals, XM conducts extensive due diligence, which takes time. And although not being a national security agency, there are so many individuals that we have to continue to conduct due diligence with. And because of all the geopolitical issues surrounding a lot of the projects, we work very closely with interagency partners. However, one of the things is, as you know, Congressman, when the committee instituted a non-discrimination policy, we understand that we write to our standard of reasonable assurance of repayment, as well as we work extremely hard to support all industries and to make sure that we uphold in all of our underwriting the statutory, regulatory, and policy requirements.
Okay, thank you. My guess is, though, you must be a little frustrated at that, to improve the deal approval timelines so the bank remains competitive, particularly against, the Belt and Road and such?
Absolutely. There are some of the projects that have been no fault of XM's from a delay perspective. There are others that have, all of them, ones I think you mentioned, have security concerns, and we would really love to have an opportunity to come speak with you or any member of the committee to discuss where we are in any of those projects.
Okay. So reauthorization for XM is going to come up next Congress. So your XM's lending leverages taxpayer dollars, of course. Fiscal responsibility is critical. Of the $135 billion XM's available capital lend, how much is currently obligated?
About 34 billion.
Okay.
And we have a very strong pipeline, Congressman.
Okay. And you currently have this 2% cap on percentage of loans that can default before heavy penalties. Is that, where do you stand on that? What's your feeling about that?
Well, one of the things that we have been in discussions about the asking for that carve out for CTAP, as well as it's important for us to work with all of you to understand that no other ECA or no other, especially the PRC, does not have that type of constraint. But we are very clear that working to level the playing field is very important, and so getting a carve-out on the default rate during reauthorization would also be very important for us.
Okay, what is it now? What are you writing off? What is the default rate?
It's about 1.012 right now.
Okay, good.
Yes.
That's excellent. All right. Can you offer anything else as to your thoughts on what improvements or projects or something else that's top of mind with the Export-Import Bank and why you believe it's such an effective tool and something you're proud of?
We're very proud of the fact of the CTAP mandate that Congress awarded us. We're very proud of the fact that we have instituted a new program called MMIA, which is Make More in America, to help build and keep manufacturing right here in the United States. We believe that the combination of CTAP and MMIA as additional tools
Thank
allows
you, Chairwoman.
us.
I'm sorry, I'm out of time. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time has expired. With that, go to the gentleman from Illinois. Mr. Foster is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Luetkemeyer, and thank you for joining us today, Chair Lewis. Since 2014, the XM Bank has helped companies in Illinois export roughly $6 billion in goods, including nearly $100 million in my district alone. You know, the Chicago metropolitan region just celebrated its 11th straight year of being the #1 region in the United States for businesses to locate into. And many of these businesses are high-tech manufacturing businesses, and many of them reshoring jobs to build more in America. It's been a long-term success, I think, frankly, in large part due to the high-skilled union workforce that you can get in the Chicago metro region. And this is also a subject very dear to my heart because, as you may know, I'm actually one of the few manufacturers in the United States Congress. When I was 19, my little brother and I started this company that manufactures the majority of theater lighting equipment and exports a big fraction of what we do. So we understand all the stress that U.S. manufacturing has gone through over the last 30 years, and I really thank you for your role in mitigating that. And out of the 241 projects that XM has supported in Illinois, I'm really happy to see that nearly 3/4 of them have been from small businesses. Okay, early in this administration, the XM restarted its new business development and outreach division to engage American companies about the services that your bank can provide. So, since restarting that effort, how has the XM Bank been engaged with companies across the country that may benefit from the assistance it provides? Because not every business that knows that you exist and the help you can provide.
Well, we appreciate the question, Congressman, and we appreciate the committee continuing to work with us throughout state and localities, especially in the state of Illinois. We met with, at Select USA, we just met with the governor's team talking about new products like MMIA, and we are really looking forward to the complementary work that we can do between CTAP and our Make More in America initiative.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to encourage you to reach out more to the small businesses everywhere, because some of them know, and the ones that know are very enthusiastic about your program, and most of them just sort of look at you blankly when I go and talk to chambers of commerce throughout the 8 counties that I represent. Now, in the 2019 reauthorization of the XM Bank, Congress established the China and Transformational Exports Program, which aims to counter subsidies and finance provided by the government of China and advance U.S. competitiveness in key industries around the world. And this is something I am, personally very keenly aware of. We, had to compete with cloned Chinese products built with poorly paid labor for some period of time now, and I'm proud that our company mainly succeeded. Though I should clarify, I no longer own the company. When I entered politics, I had my partners buy me out in order to avoid conflicts of interest, which maybe sounds a little bit quaint these days. But how does the XM Bank prioritize its review of projects that are meant to counter China's efforts in key sectors, and what other factors are considered in setting the bank's agenda in this area?
Congressman, these projects are really highly privatized. When we were reauthorized, as you said, the Congress gave us a mandate in those particular areas, and we're being very aggressive within our global business development team, within our CTAP team, and with our small business and with our large and medium-sized businesses. We have, I believe, broken down a lot of those silos to make sure that we are operating as a one XM effort. And then I think what most people don't realize about us also, Congressman, is in the small business arena that for the last 21, 22, 23, over 85 to 85% of our transactions have been in the small business arena.
Yeah. One of the things that makes your life difficult is that you compete against, for example, Chinese projects and that are frankly driven by corruption in many of the countries they operate in. You can see if you're worried about your 2% failure rate, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is probably going to have 100% failure rate in having their loans repaid, because they were not driven by actual economic analysis and market need, but by just corruption and not very well thought out. And you see riots in Kenya today.
Yes.
Because of corrupt deals that have driven the country into debt. So how do you deal with the corruption end of it?
One of the things that we definitely see is that we tell our exporters is we're not doing a race to the bottom, that we're there promoting American businesses on value and quality.
Thank you. I guess my time is up, and I just want to thank you again for what you're doing for U.S. manufacturing businesses.
Gentleman yields back. And with that, we have one more member who would like to have 5 minutes to discuss important and salient information that we can delve from the testimony of our wonderful witness here today. Did I drag out long enough that you can get ready to go, Mr. Loudermilk? Okay. With that, we'll recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Loudermilk, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for my delay in getting back, but unavoidable delays, but thank you for your patience and being with us, and I guess I'm batting cleanup here today, so we all get to take a break after this. Again, thank you for being here to testify as we lay the groundwork for reauthorizing the USXM Bank. As my colleagues pointed out, the bank's most recent reauthorization saw a realignment of the bank's priorities towards strategic competition with China. The bank now oversees the China and Transformational Exports Program, CTEP, as has been discussed earlier today. While there is a clear strategic value in countering Chinese export financing, I'm concerned that CTEP hasn't scaled fast enough. As the gentleman from Kentucky pointed out, Congress reserved no less than 20% of the bank's $135 billion statutory lending authority for financing through CTEP. That means you're supposed to reserve around $27 billion of your total lending authority for CTEP, but you've stated that the bank's total CTEP transactions amount only to around $3.6 billion. Could you explain in more detail why this is the case?
One of the things, Congressman, thank you for that question, is that some of these transformational exports are not really conducive to debt financing. Some of them are in nascent industries. However, what we have seen in the last year, and definitely in the last year and a half, is an uptick in the specialty areas, in some of the, not specialty, but in some of the transformational areas, especially around biomedical, energy efficiency, wireless, and renewables. And we are continue to not only drill down in those areas, but to look more broadly at the transformational areas to see how we can offer up our tools to assist U.S. businesses to compete and win.
So you mentioned earlier a strong pipeline of projects, but we'll want to see strong signs of momentum if we're going to reauthorize the bank in the next Congress. So could you briefly share how you plan to scale up that statutory CTEP authority?
Absolutely, Congressman. We have issued, what we have is letters of interest, over 186 of those. We think that in this particular time period, those letters of interest have been issued primarily in the energy storage and wireless communications sector, but this gives us a first review of looking at those particular projects. It also gives us an opportunity to develop those relationships and to do the type of engagements that's going to be needed. And those, we see those as interest being very important. It sends a signal to the market, and it also gives us an opportunity to convert many of those to actual projects.
Okay, thank you. During the last XM reauthorization debate, I saw the utility of the bank as a national security and strategic tool. But I was also sympathetic to some of the arguments from those opposed to reauthorizing the bank. I'm still concerned with striking the balance between aggressively countering China and maintaining XM as a lender of last resort, mainly so we're not competing with the private sector. And I think that is the concern of those that are in opposition to this. In your opinion, how do we balance those two priorities?
You're absolutely right, Congressman. We need to always be striking that balance. And in striking that balance, one of the things that Congress is very clear about XM Bank is that we're supposed to be crowding in, not crowding out the private sector. We're supposed to be additional to any particular transaction. Those are the things that our underwriters write to as standards. But one of the things that we do know, Congressman, is that many foreign competitors, they get a lot of support from their financial institutions and from their governments, especially the PRC. That right now there are over about 115 export agencies around the world, and so if we're not there, Congressman, someone else, some other government is, and especially the PRC.
Yeah, and we're in a different era than what maybe even our founders expected us to be in, especially with the heavily subsidization of competing nations. Just to shift a little bit, in your opinion, how should we calibrate a potential default rate cap increase to best balance aggressive XM financing with sound risk management while keeping the bank a lender of last resort?
Absolutely, Congressman. XM celebrated its 90th anniversary. We think there is still so much more that we can do for our exporters to be able to use XM's programs. We believe that, as you know, no one gets any special treatment at XM Bank. All transactions are consistent with our legal requirements, our financial requirements, and our technical requirements. And we're going to continue to do that type of work to ensure that our companies can stay competitive, but not just be competitive, but also to win.
All right, thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. That would go to the gentleman from Iowa. Mr. Nunn is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Ranking Member, for this. I want to appreciate President Liu for being here with us today. I think we all know that we are currently in a new era of global competition and that we are faced off with our greatest adversary here being China. And literally in this case, all the chips are on the table when it comes to this. Specifically, our challenges in the global economic leadership are very real. The U.S. possesses several critical tools, as we know, to remain a global superpower. The U.S. Import-Export Bank is one of those tools to support U.S. jobs, combat our adversaries, promote American economic influence, and in the last 10 years alone, the Export-Import Bank has helped generate nearly $250 million in economic value just in my home state of Iowa. So I want to thank you for your leadership on this, for our farmers' sake, our manufacturers, and for being here today to help keep America a leader in this era. So with this, President Liu, I want to speak specifically to the Chinese Communist Party's ownership in things like telecommunications, Huawei, ZTE, their investment in things like the deep water ports that we're seeing in South America, Peru specifically, economic corridors to Pakistan, bridges and roads being built in Cambodia. The list goes on, mineral extraction in Africa. China's Belt and Road Initiative, we all know, is targeted. It's penetrated a huge part of the economic globe, and it's an area where we need to be looking forward on how do we combat this and bring it on side. Could you provide top-line ways the U.S. can help combat this and specifically prevent the CCP taking ownership of other countries?
Absolutely, Congressman. As you said, the competition is fierce. And we have the sense of urgency at Ex-Im Bank, especially with the mandate that you all have provided us and the new tools that we are creating and the new flexibilities that we're giving in terms of providing longer tenors and looking at the terms much more, having the ability to assist our companies. That's one of the reasons why we have been here to discuss how do we continue to level the playing field, and having that CTAP carve out and early reauthorization, we believe is going to be very important.
Good to hear. Let me ask this: where's the Ex-Im Bank going? In the runway ahead, where can we be most effective?
I think we're most effective in this conversation that we're having today about CTAP. We are looking to continue to see how we can work with all of you so that the market is clear that Ex-Im is a stable institution, that Ex-Im has been revitalized, that Ex-Im has strong bipartisan support in its reauthorization. All of those are areas that I believe would be very important to send as a signal to the market that Ex-Im is not only back in business, but that we can also deliver results around the mandates that we are supporting, as well as supporting all sectors, large, medium, and small companies.
I think it's really important here, particularly when it comes to critical technologies, that we are playing in this space and sending a clear message to our competitors, particularly those coming out of Beijing. I want to look back just a little bit and say, in 2019, the reauthorization made an impact, and we saw change in behavior. Do you see any of these same changes in behavior from what the Ex-Im Bank is doing now that's helping us counter China's influence?
Absolutely. As we have been ramping up the work that we're doing in CTAP, the numbers that have been, we've been discussing around the wireless, over 542 million, energy storage, 95 million, renewable energy, over the largest deal we did, which was in Angola for 962 million. All of those came under the CTAP mandate. I think that what others are seeing, and it bears out no matter where I'm traveling to, that Ex-Im is a force to now be reckoned with.
I like to hear that. Two things real quick. Department of Commerce is working on American dual-use technologies. I want to think military capabilities here, AI, hypersonics. How does your team coordinate with Commerce on that?
We work with Commerce very, very closely. As you know, Secretary Raimondo is ex officio on our board, but we work very closely with all units in the Department of Commerce, as well as other interagency partners. We believe working together as a whole of government allows all of us to be a force multiplier.
And you've got the connective tissue you need there to be successful. You agree with that? You've got the connective tissue there with Commerce to make that successful?
Yes.
Good. Hey, last question real quick. Your foreign export credit competitors have been accused of unfair practices to gain advantage Does that compete with U.S. agencies at all?
There are definitely unfair practices throughout, especially with the PRC.
Copy that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I yield my time.
Copy that. All right, way to go, Mr. Nunn. With that, you have a question? Okay, yeah, we'll recognize the ranking member for point of personal privilege here.
Thank you so much, and thank you again to our witness and to my colleagues. I have a distinct honor today to have in our hearing room from my district the recipient first place of my congressional art competition, Olivia. And so we want to congratulate you. She has her sibling and her parents, also a small business owner. So I invited them to come in because her mother, who is a physician, also has a small business downtown. And Madam President Chair, she might also have a product that as a small business owner that might be eligible to be in your export-import. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back. And her father is also here. So I want to make sure you knew both her parents were here.
Well, congratulations, and I'll have to go by the long wall and take a look at your masterpiece. Thank you for being here today. I have one more question I want to put some little piece of information on the record right quick while we have you here, Ms. Lewis, and that is with regards to XM statutory underwriting standard, a reasonable assurance of repayment versus the Department of Energy loan program. Their underwriting standard is reasonable probability of repayment. I realize it's cutting hairs. Again, that's what we do around here. The words mean something, but this does have a significant effect. And again, I think, I guess my question is going to be, would you support changing it from assurance to probability so that you could have more flexibility and be able to compete better with in the CTP stuff?
The standard that our underwriters write to, you're absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman, is the reasonable assurance of repayment, because that's the standard that Congress has asked us to be able to make sure that we have bankable, commercially viable deals. And we look forward to working with the committee on any measure that you would want to put forth to XM Bank.
Well, I think that's a good place to start for some of the negotiations when the reauthorization starts, because I think you need the flexibility to, again, be able to compete. And that's what we're talking about here today, is being able to compete with China and allow the XM Bank to be a partner in that. With that, I'd like to thank Ms. Lewis for being here today and your testimony. Appreciate your work working with us through our vote series. Without objection, all the members will have filed legislative days within which to submit additional questions for the witness to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witness for their response. Ask the witness please respond as promptly as you can. And with that, hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.